to introduce our speakers today. They're invited by the Cambridge Center for Big Studies and it's Pedro Caracas from the University of Westminster. And you can say your name because
yeah, Regina Lozzi.
Okay, great. I can say a few things about Petros, and I think you are finishing your PhD in the US, right? Okay, so Petros is a senior lecturer in English language and linguistics at the University of Westminster in London. But he's one of us in the sense that he studied in Cambridge. Well, I didn't study in Cambridge, I just worked here. So he did his MPhil and his PhD here. He's co-director of the London branch of the Bilingualism Matters Network.
Yeah, see, you're not on camera.
It's okay. You can hear me. Yeah, okay. And in the past, he served as co-convener of the Special Interest Group on Multilingualism within the British Association for Applied Linguistics. He's the co-director of the Cyprus Center at Westminster and a trustee of the National Resource Center for Supplementary Education. His work is extremely important. It combines both typological aspects, but crucially social linguistic approaches to a lot of very interesting things, particularly between varieties of Greek. Yeah, so Cypriot Greek, Standard Greek. And today they're going to talk about something which I've never heard before about. So this is onward migration, right? And so we're looking forward to talk.
Thank you for this very nice introduction. It's very good to be back. So I'll start with this talk, and Regina will continue to the end. So I'm going to start with a small vignette and experience I had in North London not that long ago, but it's an interesting one in that it encapsulates a lot of the work, the ethnographic work that we are doing in the big city of London around Greek-speaking migration, including by people of Albanian origin. So I'm sitting at the restaurant, looking at my phone as I'm waiting for my order. In the restaurant, whose name consists of the name of a famous Greek city and the English word grill, 3 members of the family are employed. The mother and the father who cook in the kitchen, and the son who deals with the customers. My boredom is disrupted by another customer who enters the restaurant. It seems that he knows the family. He exchanges a few words in Greek with his son at the till, completes his order, and sits at another table waiting. Suddenly, someone, who I cannot see, sneezes. Shindet is heard from the other customer. From the kitchen, I hear a breath and a short response from the mother, Efkarishton. So a very multilingual and multicultural interaction in a space that is very emblematically Greek. This restaurant is a Souvlaki in North London. And as I said, it encapsulates a lot of the experiences and the presence of Albanian migrants in emblematic Greek spaces in the city of London. So our work deals with onward migration. A very simple definition is offered by Ahrens and King, who define it as a spatial trajectory that involves extended stays in 2 or more destination countries. In the migration studies literature, it's known by a number of different terms, including transit migration, serial migration, stepwise migration. Regina, myself, and other colleagues became interested in this migration trajectory some years ago, and we were intrigued by the fact that it challenges more traditional and static or sedentary conceptualizations of migration as a movement between only 2 poles, A and B, one origin and one destination. Something that happens from a here and now to a there and then, once in someone's lifetime, and it is permanent. Onward migration, alongside other types of migration, like circular migration, offer a more dynamic view of what people who are on the move, mobile individuals, actually do in today's day and age. So onward migration highlights the complexity, fluidity, reversibility of movement in time and space. So onward migrants change destinations, go back to destinations, return to identify new places where they want to migrate. So they form what we call fragmented migration trajectories, and there's a very also high degree of temporariness among some people. And this approach to migration echoed with the social linguistics of mobile resources, a new approach to present-day mobility that emphasizes some key anthropological changes in the 90s onwards. So since the 90s, we've seen new kinds of migration that have been made possible through easy and cheap travel, including by air, and also the emergence of digital technologies and new communicative practices that emerge in those contexts. So a host of critical social linguists, applied linguists, have highlighted the new complex and social and communicative context that arise from this postmodern, post-multilingual era that we're in, consisting of networks of mobile individuals that develop, acquire, and use very complex repertoires of semiotic resources, not just linguistic resources, but more broadly communicative resources, semiotic resources, in order to express their identities, achieve their life goals, have the migration project succeed. So in these postmodern and post-multilingual times, linguistic practices are characterized by hybridity, fluidity, fragmentedness, and deterritorialization as mobile individuals dislodge languages that are traditionally thought of as sedentary and move them in time and space, position them in new social contexts in which they interact with other languages, other linguistic resources, other communicative resources, leading to very complex communicative and linguistic practices. So together with other colleagues that I'll mention in a minute, we developed a research agenda for the study of the language and onward migration nexus that aims to untangle the social linguistic complexity that is created as onward migrants dislodge the linguistic resources that they have from their conventional and essentialized origins. For example, Greek from Greece or Albanian from Albania. Move them, they reposition them in time and space and mobilize them as they navigate those fragmented trajectories to achieve different aims in their lives. So we also seek to examine how onward migrants draw on these resources to address needs and achieve their aspirations, including constructing identities. This is one area that we're focusing today. We're interested in how onward migrants use and link those repertoires with experiences of discrimination, precarization, de-skilling, and onward downward occupation mobility. This is the situation where migrants do jobs that are below their qualifications in every new migratory destination. And there's a host of literature that emphasizes how onward migrants experience different forms of discrimination and vulnerability in each destination of their migration projects. So we're also interested in how differences in language create divisions within onward migrant groups, between onward migrants and other groups of both migrants and non-migrants. So the work we're going to be presenting today was funded through the University of Westminster as part of a project that was entitled Makers, Advocates and Users of Language Policy as Co-Creators of Social Linguistic Research, onward migrants in London. I was a principal investigator, Vani Mitra, Adriana Patino Santos, and Manuel Stratinakis were the co-investigators. We had 3 postdoctoral research assistants, Regina Dodds being one of them, but also Peter Browning and Julie Pepper, and also Jan Evans as a research fellow. We investigated 3 groups of onward migrants we worked with, but also 3 groups of migrants, people who had migrated from Albania to Greece and from Greece to the UK, from Brazil to Italy to the UK, or from Brazil directly to the UK on Italian passports, and people who migrated from Colombia to Spain to the UK. And the three groups are interesting for different reasons, both social and historical, but also linguistic. So, for example, in the Albanian Greece UK case, the people that we're going to talk to you about today are multilingual. They have resources for Greek and Albanian, for English and other languages in the repertoires. In the case of the Colombian Spanish group, we're dealing with different varieties of Spanish. In the case of Brazilians from Italy or Italian Brazilians, we deal with a group that may have no linguistic resources in Italian, but have Italian passports. So we're investigating how the lack of knowledge of Italian impacts their lives as Italian citizens in the UK. So today, we're going to be focusing on identities. We're going to be looking at how Albanian onward migrants from Greece construct their individual and also group identities, different types of identities, how they circulate, take up, reproduce, and counter categories that are associated with specific points in their migration trajectories, how they relate to the biographies and experiences, and how these shaped by the broader social and political context of the UK. A little bit of background on identities, or on migrant identities. The approach we take towards identities is a social constructivist one. We see with the Athena the self as fragmented, multivocal, discontinuous, and contradictory. We consider identities as being endlessly created anew according to social constraints and social context. We see identities as the products of social interaction, emerging through negotiation of social positionings. From that point of view, they're ever changing. And we consider, together with other scholars in migration and language, migration as the social condition par excellence that engenders the redefining and reconstruction of individual and group identities. Alisa Harris, in his 2020 book, develops the concept of project identities following the Stells 2010. And he writes how migrants seek, without necessarily succeeding, the creative management of elements from different cultural and linguistic sources, constructing various forms of project identities. Migrants are translocal, transnational subjects. They have experiences from different locales and cultures. They interact with new destinations, potentially temporary, all of which, however, add to their resources and shape their experiences and linguistic practices. So Pablo in 2004 was talking about the multiple belonging of migrants. Zooming into Albanian migration, a lot of people might be very familiar with the history of Albanian migration, especially as it relates to Greece. So Julie Volnetari has identified three periods in Albanian history that are very linked with people leaving Albania and migrating to the countries. The end of the Hoxha regime in 1990, the outbreak, civil war in 1997, caused by the collapse of the pyramid schemes, the war in Kosovo, and more recently the recession, the government debt crisis that affected Greece. And some of these images, the image at the bottom is very familiar to those who have memories of Albanian immigration. The image at the top is a work of a photographer artist symbolizing the very strong feeling in Albania that everybody's leaving the country. So when here in 1998 already talked about Albania offering an example, a case study of a new migration order. So Albania can be thought of as a nation of migrants. In 2020, the population was a little under 3 million. A census was conducted, I believe, towards the end of last year, and estimates don't paint a fully rosy picture. It is estimated that the population of Albania will fall, some predict even by 1 million people, on a par with similar population decreases in other Balkan countries like in Bulgaria and Romania. In 2020, there were 1,600, more than 1,600 Albanians living outside Albania. 1 million people migrated between 1990 and 2001, and you can see there statistics that every year more people leave Albania than return to it or migrate to it. So there's a long-term negative net migration. So a little bit of history about the presence of Albanian migrants in Greece. You perhaps already know that Greece was a top migration destination for Albanian migrants from 1990 to 2010. Albanians constitute the largest migrant community in Greece. 5% of Greece's population is made up of Albanian migrants. In Greece, it has been very well documented how Albanian migrants led their lives in the context of very powerful racism and xenophobic discourses, everyday experiences of physical, verbal violence and attacks and social stigmatization, which are not unrelated to a range of assimilation practices that were adopted by some Albanian migrants in an attempt to counter the very, very negative repercussions of racism, discrimination, and xenophobia. So baptisms, conversions to the Greek Orthodox religion, the official or unofficial adoption of group names alongside original Albanian names, and a general masking or hiding of Albanianness and Albanian identities. More recent work is emphasizing the emergence of hybrid identities, especially among younger members of the Albanian community in Greece, the so-called second generation, people who were born in Greece or people who migrated to Greece as young children and spent most of their adult life in Greece. Of course, from a social linguistic point of view, it's not unsurprising that we find a language shift from Albanian to Greek among younger generations, and also the usual efforts from the community to counter language shift through community language education. I have already mentioned the second generation, and it is indeed very interesting what's happening at the moment in Greece through a number of different initiatives led by second generation Albanians in Greece that render the presence of Albanians in Greek society more visible through a number of different channels. You see here, for example, an initiative of Albanian migrants and solidarity, people expressing solidarity. You see short films like Bashka, an excellent film. If you find an opportunity to watch it, please do. The Archive of Albanian Migration that was founded last year through the Archives of Modern Social History in Greece. You see there a still from a theatre performance called by Indita by Mario Abushi, a young, very talented theatre director. You see a festival, the Mitch Festival. Mitch stands for friend in Albanian. So a very active presence in the last elections in Greece last year. The number of Albanian candidates for members of parliament was very high as well. But the second generation is leaving Greece massively. You will be very familiar with the fact that between 2012 and 2021, a little over 1 million people emigrated from Greece. Statistics have shown that only half of those were ethnically or originally Greek, and the other half was migrants who had migrated from other places to Greece. The UK emerged as the second top destination of Greek neo-migrants after Germany. Work by Manos Vertanaakis, our collaborator and colleagues, has estimated that the number of UK residents who were born in Greece more than tripled in just 10 years. Albanians are an integral part of this Greek neo-migration that is both visible and invisible at the same time. So, as I said at the beginning through the vignette, in emblematically Greek spaces, Albanians inhabit those spaces. They are very present in Greek things. But statistically, they are invisible because they have migrated to the UK on big passports. So there is no actual, we don't know how big a proportion they are of this Greek neo migration, and it's not easy to gauge the number. This is because following 2015, a very large number of Albanians in Greece became eligible to apply for Greek citizenship, and a lot of them are now Greek citizens. So we believe that part of the increase in the number of speakers of Greek in the UK that was documented in the 2021 census is in part due to citizens of Greek passport holders of Albanian origin. So there are, and there is a little bit of research by Dan Moshu that first drew attention to this fact. In contrast to Greece, where still one can say that Albanian citizens may still not be as present as one would expect in very public-facing contexts, in London, Albanians from Greece are an integral part of Greek community life. So on the left, you see an Instagram post on the account of Hellenic TV, a Greek-speaking TV station that operates from North London. And you see there one of the presenters, Zila Zulistari, who presents the new films of the week, of course, with her Albanian name. You see, again, still from a show, with Vasilis Panaghi, who welcomes Mr. Elton Shuti, who is a restaurant owner in London. And you see how he's we captured the subtitle. It says that they're welcoming Mr. Elton Shuti, and of course Mr. Tony. So the type of masking of identity is is still going on in London. And you see the number of members that a private Facebook group has, Albanian Greeks living in the UK, like 27,000 members. As last week, of course, we can't claim that all of them are Albanians from Greece, but the number is. Of course, in the UK, we know that especially since 2022, Albanians found themselves at the center of very, very powerful xenophobic discourses that were related to the increase in the number of Albanian citizens who crossed the English Channel on small boats in 2022. There was a very strong discourse in the media targeting Albanian citizens, including from the UK government, representatives of which claimed that Albanians should be blankly barred from claiming asylum in the UK. So this led to a lot of the people that we've worked with and for to experience a second time a targeting of their ethnicity, identity, and origin in the media. So the kinds of things that they experienced in Greece in the 1990s and still experience today from mainstream media are sort of like a bad reminder of things that should be left in the past and not repeated. So today we're presenting to you part of work we did with 13 Albanian migrants from Greece who are based in the UK. As you can see, it is a very young bunch and a very highly educated one. The least educated person that we worked with has a BA degree, and the most educated person has a PhD degree. The rest all have MA degrees. So they are perhaps they're representative of the general characteristics of Greek migration, but not everyone who migrated from Greece is of this profile, and not all Albanians who migrated from Greece are of this profile. So we are mindful of the fact that our participants are of a certain elite background. They all worked in professional and managerial positions that match the qualifications and funding. Something else that we're very aware of in working with these participants were our positionalities. So I should mention very clearly that I'm not Albanian myself. I do not have any experiences similar to the ones that our participants talk to us about. I cannot imagine or relate to these experiences in any way that I can claim that these are my own. My role in this project has to do with my long ethnographic engagement with Greek-speaking communities in London, especially in the north of the city. So it is only natural and opposite that Regina, who is Albanian herself and will position herself in this research, will present the rest of this paper.
Hello from me as well. So yes, as Petros was saying, to sort of like tell you a bit about myself, also and to position myself in relation to this research. First of all, my name is Regina Ndosi. I am myself Albanian and of this so-called second generation that Petros was talking about, being born in Albania and raised in Greece, where I was also educated. And additionally, I'm an onward migrant myself, having onward migrated after my studies, my undergraduate studies in the US. So this sort of project is very near and dear to my heart, but also my PhD research in general, which looks at ethno-racial slurs towards Albanians in Greece, perceptions and judgments of Albanian accented Greek, and also look at constructions of Albanians in internet memes, in the Greek internet space. We forgot, it's okay. So our research for this project that Petros introduced, we conducted 3 focus groups over Zoom. We had 13 total participants. Actually, this was already mentioned over July of 2022. And also we conducted another consultation session with an NGO here in the UK that deals with Albanian migrants and particularly looking at their perspective on Albanians having come from Greece, and especially dealing with this organization dealing with onward migrants, right, that are sort of not fitting this this profile that Petros just mentioned, right, these very highly skilled and educated individuals, but rather people who are more like their parents' age, so the so-called first generation of migrants from Greece. During during these focus groups, we came to notice how participants dialogically and discursively constructed various types of identities, but also at the same time how they came or contested other identities that have been assigned to them, right, or imposed on them. Very prominently featured the construction of sort of their or the shaping, I guess, of their migratory trajectories and their lives by the borders and the border crossing, and not just the initial border crossing from Albania to Greece when they first migrated, but also with their visits, right, the border crossing during the visits to Albania and then back to Greece. Characteristically here, for example, Redon, I'm gonna read the original excerpt, which is in Greek, but we also have here in the slides the English translation. Νομίζω πρέπει να ήταν 2002-2003. Κινούσαμε τους γονείς μου σαν ένα πάρα πολύ κρύο χειμώνα από Αλβανία προς Ελλάδα. Κάποια στιγμή είχε μιλήσει ο Γκαζνέτ Καπλάνη για border syndrome. Ειλικρινά, υπάρχει αυτό το border syndrome και νομίζω ότι μας έχει έρθει όλους από την περίοδο που έπρεπε να φύγουμε από Αλβανία και να βγούμε στην Ελλάδα. Οπότε ο έλεγχος των διαβατηρίων ήταν αδιανόητα. Ο φόβος των Αλβανών από τα σημεία του παραμεθόριου. Οπότε θυμάμαι χαρακτηριστικά κάποια στιγμή, όταν πήγαμε εμείς να βγούμε, για κάποιο περίεργο λόγο, δεν ξέρω γιατί, ένας αστυνομικός εκεί πέρα μας γύρισε τα διαβατήρια και είπε: γυρίστε πίσω, χωρίς ποτέ να δώσει εξήγηση, το οποίο ήταν ένα τραυματικό σοκ για μένα. Και έπρεπε να πάω να τρέξω εγώ μέσα στο κτίριο και να πω στους άλλους αστυνομικούς ότι εγώ αύριο πάω σχολείο. Δεν μπορείτε. Πώς να γυρίσουμε πίσω, εδώ είναι η ζωή μας. A lot of the participants' narratives in the focus groups also centered around sort of various types of violence, right, including physical, that they've experienced growing up in Greece. And Eritan here recounts a story where he was accused for doing something very, very naughty, let's say, at school, and wrongfully being accused actually for that because some other classmate had committed the said naughty thing. So in his own words, μπαίνω απλώς στην τάξη το πρωί, έκτη δημοτικού. Το θυμάμαι σαν τώρα. Και ο καθηγητής με έχει πιάσει από εδώ και με έχει πετάξει έξω και ο διευθυντής με περίμενε έξω να με δει. Και το τραγικό ήταν ότι οι άλλες τάξεις είχαν εκτές τις πόρτες τους και οι καθηγητές απλά έκλεισαν την πόρτα. Και έφερα τις κλωτσιές μου, τις παλιάρες και ξαναμπήκα στην τάξη. Really prominently in the narratives featured the participants' claims and asserting of various ethnic identities, right? So very prominently featured their claim and assertion of their Greek identity, right? Which oftentimes have been denied to them, even though they are Greek passport holders, as Petis mentioned earlier. So Albert here says, εγώ δεν μπαίνω στο τρυπάκι να εξηγήσω. Δεν έχω τόσο πολύ χρόνο για να τους πω ότι, ξέρεις, είμαι από εκεί. Αν με ρωτήσουν, λέω είμαι Έλληνας, γιατί δεν υπάρχει λόγος να μπω τώρα να εξηγήσω σε ποιον και γιατί. Αν με ρωτήσουν, λέω ναι, η καταδοχή μου είναι αυτό, εκείνο, ναι. Right? So the Greekness is a given, right? It's undisputed, and really anybody can tell them anything about it. So the Greekness, right, and is really not just how, or I should say, I should rephrase it, right? They mobilize this Greekness to seek, right, of course, to onward migrate, but also to seek better employment and life opportunities for themselves. Here, Olga, and this excerpt, and talking about her, the work that she does. Έχουμε και κάποιους Έλληνες πελάτες, οπότε έχω αναλάβει εγώ όλα αυτά τα accounts λόγω της γλώσσας. Και έχω καταλάβει, ας πούμε, ότι όταν έχουμε κάνει διαπραγματεύσεις είναι αλλιώς όταν τους μιλάω στα ελληνικά. Νιώθω να τους καταλαβαίνω και τους νοιάζομαι. Μέσω της γλώσσας νιώθω ότι είμαστε πιο κοντά, παρόλο που είμαστε πιο αντίθετες όψεις του νομίσματος. Οπότε η γλώσσα μας έχει φέρει πιο κοντά και έχουμε έρθει και στις διαπραγματεύσεις αυτά που θέλουμε, σε κατάσταση win-win και οι δύο πλευρές. Many of the participants, right, at the same time, while they were asserting their Greekness, they were also asserting their Albanianness. As that was mentioned earlier, right, oftentimes they had to hide this, or maybe due to the assimilatory forces that they encountered within Greece. But onward migration to the UK often brought forward, right, this need to explore their Albanian identity as well. So here Arbor calls it Iali Mitiki Rosa, right? The first one being Greek, but also the other, Iali. And Ermal in this quote, πιστεύω ότι η ρύθμιση είναι κάτι ωραίο. Και είναι κάτι το διαφορετικό και να γυρνάς εκεί. Και να γυρνάς με νέες αναμνήσεις. Να γυρνάς με άλλες εικόνες που έχεις, αλλά είναι ωραίο να γυρνάς στη σχέση σου. Γιατί πιστεύω ότι είναι καλό και το διαφορετικό που έχεις πάρει εσύ, να δώσω λίγο χρόνο στην χώρα που έχει γεννηθεί. Όλοι οι παππούδες σου, όλοι γεννήθηκαν εκεί. Άρα με βλέπω, θα το πω σε 5 χρόνια, αλλά μπορεί σε 15 χρόνια να γυρίσω πίσω στην Αλβανία. Not all participants felt very discomfortable about asserting their Albanianness or in claims about ever returning to Albania. There was some ambivalence, right, to this Albanianness, going back and forth and sort of like claiming it as their homeland, but at the same time feeling strangers in Albania. This is very obvious in this quote by Nerikan. Θέλω να έχω μια άλλη ζωή για να γυρίσω στην Ελλάδα. Αυτό σκέφτομαι τώρα. Σε 3 με 5 χρόνια. Αν θα το κάνω, δεν ξέρω, θα δείξει. Μπορεί. Όχι στην Αλβανία όμως. Στην Αλβανία το έχω σκεφτεί να γυρίσω. Θέλω να πηγαίνω πάντα, αλλά όχι να γυρίσω για πάντα. Γιατί είμαι ξένος. Είναι η πατρίδα μου. Oftentimes in the UK, they also participants mentioned having to sort of what's the word? I'm sorry, I'm lacking the word. To fight, right, for the Albanians to be recognized by other Albanian speakers, right? So oftentimes, other Albanian speakers in the UK who maybe don't have a similar migratory trajectory with them home or migrating from Greece. So, for example, refugees that came from Kosovo, and then in the late 90s, but also Albanian direct migrants, right, from Albania to the UK, would often, right, criticize their assimilation into the Greek society, and really not count them as real Albanians, or as true Albanians. So in this quote by Nerikan, right, you can really see this claim, right, and this countering of this, no, we're actually true Albanians. And this is from a conversation that he had with a colleague and who was a direct migrant from Albania. Ο πατέρας μου λέει, αυτός το είπε στην κλάκα. Εσάς τους Αλβανούς της Ελλάδας σας συχαίνετε. Και λέω, γιατί μας συχαίνετε? Γιατί λέει, όλη την ώρα μιλάτε ελληνικά και δεν είστε Ελλάδας της Αλβανίας και είστε πουλημένοι. Και δεν ξέρω εγώ το τι έλεγε. Και το αστείο ότι το παιδί αυτό μιλούσε όλη την ώρα αγγλικά. Και του λέω, σε τι γλώσσα μου μιλάς τώρα? Και μου λέει αγγλικά. Και του λέω, και εγώ είμαι Αλβανός, και γιατί μου μιλάς αγγλικά? Και λέει, εντάξει, μου είναι πιο εύκολο. Και λέω, αυτή την απάντηση να πεις και στον πατέρα σου. Very often in these focus groups emerge this pattern of mobile identities, right? So participants really mobilizing meta-linguistic and educational linguistic skills and educational background, right, to seek better life opportunities and not really being grounded or rooted in one place, in one locale. So and this is captured really by this. Very nicely by this quote by Olta. Εμένα το μότο της ζωής μου είναι όπου βγεις και πατρίς. Όπου υπάρχει πράσινο φως του τούνελ, όχι μόνο για τον εαυτό μου, αλλά και για τους γονείς μου, επειδή αύριο μεθαύριο θα είναι ηλικιωμένοι άνθρωποι που θα πρέπει να τους φροντίζω. Ή αργότερα όταν θα χτίσω τη δική μου οικογένεια. Σκέφτομαι και το όλο υπόλοιπο πακέτο δηλαδή. Όπου υπάρχει πράσινο φως, εκεί θα πάω. Δεν σημαίνει ότι επειδή είμαι τώρα εδώ, θα μείνω για πάντα εδώ. Θεωρώ ότι δεν είναι δέντρο για να ριζώσω. Όπου υπάρχουν ευκαιρίες, θα προσαρμοστώ αντίστοιχα. Also very prominently, right, featured along with this assertion, right, of their Greekness and along with their assertion of their Albanianness, right, and emerged really this hybridity of their identities, right, that we're both Greek and Albanian, not half Greek and half Albanian, or partly Greek and partly Albanian, but we're both, right? We're both Greek and Albanian. So, for example, Don talks about, right, how his personality, right, is shaped, or who he is shaped by both of these countries. Η Αλβανία μου έδωσε αξίες, θυμάμαι τον εαυτό μου, δηλαδή τους παππούδες μου, να μου δίνει τις αξίες. Η Ελλάδα μου έχει δώσει φίλους, δηλαδή μου έχει δώσει friend for life, και εδώ μου δίνεται μια προοπτική. And this quote also talks about the fact that, right, he really is able to build strong interpersonal relations with other Albanian onward migrants from Greece, right, from Greek, specifically these Greek Albanians, right, with these hybrid identities, and finds himself unable, right, to socialize anymore, and build meaningful relationships with other Albanians who only have this one migratory journey from Albania to Greece, or from with other Greeks. So in this quote, ακόμα και οι φιλίες μου πλέον δεν είναι ούτε Έλληνες ούτε Αλβανοί. Δεν μπορώ, γιατί δεν μπορώ να μοιραστώ αυτά που έχω περάσει, να τα μοιραστώ με αυτούς. Όλοι οι φίλοι μου τώρα είμαστε Ελληνοαλβανοί, όπως τους λένε. Δηλαδή είμαστε Αλβανοί που έχουν μεγαλώσει στην Ελλάδα. Έχουμε πάνω κάτω τα ίδια μυαλά, τα ίδια βιώματα, και δεν μπορώ εγώ αυτή τη στιγμή που είμαι να πω ότι θα κάνω πάρα πολύ καλή παρέα με έναν Έλληνα, με έναν Αλβανό. Γιατί δεν έχω τόσο πολλά κοινά μαζί τους. So the shared, right, migratory trajectories, shared biographies emerging as really strong, right, factors about the people that they meaningfully connect. Of course, right, the language, right, and the linguistic repertoires that and the creative language mixing and mobilization of both of these languages along with English in the UK emerged very prominently as well. Creating what we're calling here translanguaging identities. Here, for example, says δεν μιλάω μια γλώσσα, όπως είπαν και τα παιδιά. Είναι μια μίξη αλβανικά και ελληνικά μαζί. Κανένας από τις δύο, από τις δύο πλευρές δηλαδή, δεν καταλαβαίνει όταν μας ακούει τι λέμε. Similarly, Gida talked about mobilizing right strategically Albanian and Greek in her encounters right in the UK. And in how this helps her right feel that she has a connection right with even with strangers. So she says, μόλις ακούω ελληνικά ή και αλβανικά, κατευθείαν θα μιλήσω και ελληνικά, κατευθείαν θα μιλήσω αλβανικά. Και τι κάνεις από που είσαι. Είναι πάρα πολύ ωραίο να νιώθεις ότι βρίσκεσαι σε έναν δικό σου άνθρωπο. Earlier, Petros talked about right, these assimilationist forces, and oftentimes, right, they need to challenge stereotypes. Being growing up as Albanians in Greece, this challenging of stereotypes and contesting of stereotypes seems to follow them to some extent in the UK, right? Not just as Albanians, but additionally now in the UK as also Greeks, right? Again, being Greek passport holders, but also right, claiming this Greek identities. The stereotypes that they've encountered about Albanians are center really or evolve around, you know, dealing drugs and being members of the mafia, and stereotypes about being Greek, centering around laziness. Especially as they come right after the Great Recession in Greece, and irrational public spending. So, for example, Ermal talking about the stereotype about Albanians that he's encountered στο πανεπιστήμιο και άλλοι άνθρωποι από άλλες χώρες, όταν έλεγα Αλβανός μου έλεγε drug dealer. Δηλαδή το πρώτο που μου λέγανε ήταν αυτό. Δηλαδή είχαν το στερεότυπο ότι εντάξει, εφόσον είσαι Αλβανός, βάζει ναρκωτικά. And I don't talking about the stereotypes about Greeks that he's encountered. Όταν ήρθα εγώ το 2015, ήταν πρώτη είδηση Ελλάδα, ας πούμε, στα κανάλια. Και ήταν το bankruptcy. Δηλαδή θυμάμαι χαρακτηριστικά. Εγώ το έλεγα ότι έχουμε δωρεάν παιδί στην Ελλάδα. Μου λέγανε, βέβαια, γι' αυτό είστε bankrupt. Τώρα, ας πούμε, που έχετε μπελιά, ότι δεν σας αρέσει να δουλεύετε, σας αρέσει μόνο να κάθεστε και να πίνετε καφέ. Right, contesting stereotypes have not just been a thing, but it has been sort of like a common pattern in from every country of origin, every country of destination country. So in their visits in Greece, have to deal with this stereotype, and then a lot of participants mentioned this, of Yorgo, right? So this is really captured, right? What you just the stereotype of Yorgo is really captured by this meme here, which reads as Kyrios Yorgo για τον Ελλάδα. Ο Yorgo viene Albania, nu të fetë qysht dhe nuk kërkon trapet. Yorgo është zgjuar dhe të disi Yorgo refile. Right, so we have right a lot of Greek words in there, right? Ελλάδα, Albania, the refile, and trapet, right? They're sort of like the most typical Greek coffee, right? Really speaking to this and stereotypical representation of the assimilated Albanian, right? Not just linguistically, right, with all the Greek words coming up, but also culturally, right? With this adopting the traditional coffee, right, as a lifestyle. So Albanians, right, going back to Albanian visits, right, had to also counter these types of stereotypes, and again assert, right, and challenge the fact that they're not Albanian, or accusations that they're not Albanian, I should say. I'm just going to see this. Finally, the participants, right, with the created or constructed professional identities. Oftentimes, this came up with the extent, right, of language learning that they talked about in their in the focus groups. And these languages are, of course, in addition to speaking Albanian, Greek, and English while in the UK. So Arber also spoke French, Albana spoke Spanish, Elmal and Redon spoke German, and Olta spoke both French and Spanish. And the idea here is that what they're using, right, they're using these linguistic resources on top of their professional skills to seek better employment opportunities and better life opportunities that perhaps they didn't have in Greece, and this sort of like this comparison between Greece and the UK becomes evident in this quote here by Albana. We have plenty of, sorry, I don't have the Greek one here for some reason. We have plenty of opportunities here for jobs in my field. We just need to improve our English a bit, speak a bit like the English do, so that we can have a better job position. So to conclude, right, we see here that the participants in our study challenge, right, various types of identities, either ideological, political, legal, right, that really have been imposed on them because these do not reflect who they are, right? They do not reflect their biographies, they do not reflect their trajectories or their lived experiences. They also challenge stereotypical representations or stereotypical archaeological figures associated with their countries of origin, right? Both Albania and Greece. So they constantly are asserting, negotiating, and constructing new identities that, in the words of Delfina, are fragmented, multivocal, discontinuous, and contradictory. They creatively manage, right, their linguistic and cultural resources to construct various forms of project identities. They find themselves, right, being different and differentiate themselves from other Albanians who are born in Albania, right, and directly migrated from Albania to the UK, and also from Greeks who were born in Greece, right. They're different from them, right, in the basis of their language, but also, right, in terms of like the experiences, right, their migratory trajectories, and lived experiences. And due to this, right, the linguistic differences, they seem to be unintelligible, right, to these direct migrants from Greece and Albania. So we hear that they're carving, and these onward migrants are carving a new translanguaging space that sits at the intersection between the Albanian and the Greek migration, and they're occupying this translanguaging space with other Albanian onward migrants from Greece. With whom, right, they feel that they can create meaningful and important social relationships due to their shared linguistic repertoires, but also their language learnings. They position themselves as translocal and transnational subjects that maintain links and relations with both of their places of origin and also with their new migratory destination, the UK. And these are our thanks from David.
Great, thank you very much. This was very illuminating, at least for me. So what I would like, I mean, do you want to keep the slides or shall we? I mean, I don't know, should we start with the questions? Yeah, so if there are any questions from the online people, please start speaking, unmute yourselves and start speaking. But otherwise, can I just ask if there are questions here? I know that some people have to leave soon, but if you want to ask.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, the illuminating tool.
Can you speak up?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I have a question about the response. You say they are trying to challenge and combat the stereotypes and the identities that are being imposed upon them. But the question is about the opposite. If any of them try to deconstruct their authenticity, or do they feel that they have to change something about themselves apart from, improving their English? Something on the cultural level or like socio-cultural level to belong more comfortably in the local community. Did any of them mention something like they wanted to change to adjust better to the local community?
Can I, so they didn't overtly say something like that, but, some of our participants, right, as Tapesh was mentioning earlier, right, had sort of like, as in while in Greece, had sort of like succumbed to be this military forces, right? So they had changed names, right? They're converted right to Greek Orthodoxy, and there was some trend that we noticed of going back to their Albanian names while in the UK. So it seems, I don't know that it's like, like I like a very strong understanding of I need to change to fit in or to be a true Albanian. But to me, it's a very sort of like indexical of sort of like that process happening internally, perhaps. But I'm not sure about any other changes.
I think some of the work that we presented earlier this week, there was a sense that they didn't have to change that much about themselves in order to fit in, because this was a very accepting society. So a very big change. Someone mentioned that life in the UK was the antithesis of life in Greece. That in the UK, they felt like foreigners among foreigners, and not like the foreigners as in Greece. Some of the participants mentioned that it was in the UK that for the first time they felt like they were not being treated in a discriminatory racist way. So that was something that a context in the migration project was what they felt that could not only be themselves, but also bring out some of aspects of themselves that they had been forced to not put in the background and see it. So no.
Thank you for a fantastic talk. I mean, it's a very interesting topic, obviously. I've got a question about positionality, because I have been thinking quite a lot about positionality lately. And my question is a very genuine question, is that by declaring your sort of own position, which essentially amounts to declaring your background, right? Does that amount to declaring your positionality, or how it actually affects one's data collection, data analysis, and so on and so forth? And to what extent this is actually because you handed over at kind of a critical point when the data was going to be presented. So for you, Petros, does it mean that you can, because of positionality and fear of potential appropriation, you cannot present the data from the Albanian Greek immigrants? Or, I mean, does it have any sort of semiotics, basically? Or I'm just trying also for myself to work out positionality in terms of how you present it, because there has been quite a bit of a discussion about this. So I'm genuinely curious to know how you deal with positionality.
So we thoughtfully try to create opportunities where both of us are able to present this research together, either on site or online.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, we timed this seminar today because Gina happened to be visiting from the United States this week. This morning, however, I did present part of this research at my university alone, which was not able to be there. And at that talk this morning, I said, this is a talk that's joined. Pretty much what I said today, my positionality is such and such. I cannot relate, and I'll do my best to respond based on the analysis of with the data that we have. I agree with you that positionality is a lens that you need to see the data from the conceptualization of the project all the way to the collection of the data analysis, and it's a journey. I have to say, I considered my positionality more strongly with this project than with previous projects of mine that I have done, including social linguistic projects. And there's always better, you can always do better. So what I strive for to personally is, as I said, to not claim that I can even imagine what this experience might have been like. And as I said, to create opportunities for both of us to present. So in a sense, the Albanian voices are given through Gina's voice.
Yeah, I mean to add a little bit to that. Doesn't have to write our positionality, right, and these statements, right, come to sociolinguistic through linguistic anthropology and through anthropology, right? The anthropologists have been doing that forever. And it's really not just recognizing maybe our shortcomings, but sort of recognizing the lens from which we view things, right? I think that's the most important thing, and also sort of like putting it out there, right? So people know what is the lens. There is no such thing, right? There's just everything with objective truth about the analysis, right? That we do, where it's influenced by all our positions, right? All these experiences that we've had. So I think that's just putting out there, right, this lens that has shaped, right, our worldview and the view of how we look at the data.
I mean, I don't need to kind of drag this, but I find it fascinating, obviously. Thank you very much for your replies. I mean, I think there's also quite a few contradictions, because in the literature, I mean, from an anthropological perspective, I mean, quite often you've got people in the field actually who conceal or not making a big deal of their sort of, if you like, background, so that they can actually assimilate in the field. So then you have all this sort of positionality declared afterwards. I find this moronic, to say the very least. But at the same time, from a philosophical perspective, or more philosophical perspective, or self-reflexive, whatever you want to call it, when we are actually talking about third spaces and you know, hybrid and all that, to declare one's positionality, yes, but in perfect awareness that it's also fluid, or it can be rendered fluid. So I suppose I've got quite a few issues with positionality lately, but thank you very much for sharing your perspective on that.
Yeah, so thank you. I was just wondering whether you have included a look into the 3 languages that these people speak, well, at least 3. Right, so Albanian, Greek, and English, and whether you focus, I mean, in order to confirm or validate your arguments, you know, like whether they're contested, you know, identities and so on. Is there any direct linguistic evidence you can use in terms of the choice of how they express themselves in you know, what words they use, what phrase they use, you know, whether they are negatively charged, you know, when they talk about Greece, for example, because I noticed that, you know, obviously it was like a stepping stone, but it was a stepping stone that lasted for many years, and then the crisis led to many people looking for something else. And I was wondering also from a second or third language perspective, you know, many of these people learned English in Greece, right? And so I was wondering whether there is any sort of connection there in the way that English as an additional language is used when you look at work, you know, Greek second language acquisition of English, you know, that's so are there any connections there? And do you look at linguistic evidence for the social linguistic, you know, approach?
So this project was not structural, or the focus was not on the form of the languages. It had a linguistic repertoire approach to looking at the resources and how they are mobilized in conversation and construction of mechanisms and interactions. So I think the short answer is no.
But I don't mean syntax, and the lexicon. I mean, for example, discourse particles, what is it that they use? Would they use, so do you see any transfer, let's say, happening across the languages when they?
Not really, right? And this is sort of like this group, right, is exclusively made out of second generation Albanian migrants, right? Greek is a mother tongue, right? They call it the mother tongue,
Yeah.
meaning they're native speakers, right? I think that's what they're claiming, we're native Greek speakers. And a lot of them express regret, right, for not speaking like Albanian, right, to that sort of like level of proficiency that they speak Greek. And as you saw in a couple of the excerpts, the actual mixing that was happening was between Greek and English, right, that they use now in their daily lives. Albanian did not feature as prominently in the dialogues, but also, right, these interviews were also done by both me and Pedros, right? So they are recognizing, I think also that played a role, that he's a Greek speaker, right? We're speaking Greek now, we're using Greek now, so we didn't see much of that happening in this.
But
I wonder, right, if this is an effect. Now, of course, right, it is the fact that we talked about it, right, language shift that has already been observed, right, in the second generation. But I am curious about what, like, in their own interactions, right, how does Albanian feature? And my guess is that much more, I would imagine, or I would guess that it has some role to play in those interactions.
There's a lot of discussion, as you know, primarily stemming from the US about, heritage languages and so on. And I think this is interesting, because what is a heritage language?
Right.
I mean, is it heritage bilingualism? Is it, and I think that raises a very interesting perspective also in view of heritage languages and identities, because obviously it's not a single thing.
Yeah.
It's actually much more than that.
We did have some experiences in L3 acquisition, acquiring English as an L3. Because a lot of our participants mentioned that they did not receive any formal education in Albanian in Greece. And starting to learn English and being familiar with the English alphabet facilitated the L2 or L1.
Yeah.
The literacy in Albanian, because some of the conventions are the same, so sh is SH in Albanian as well. So it was at this point when they realized that, if I learn English, I can also perhaps learn a little bit of Albanian and reading and writing. So this would mean to, I agree with Gina, probably there's a lot more than we see in interactional data and data among groups like the one that Emma would describe being consistent with Albanians from Greece in the UK only. We were planning to do it in ethnography, but the ESC didn't like it.
So at least they report on it, right? They do report on that's when we are together, that's what we're doing, right? Is this creative mixing of the three languages really in the reports, right? But it didn't really come out strongly in the actual productions.
Yes, you have to go. Yes, thank you. Right. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to the mountains.